So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Brilia, for the invitation for hosting this section. And welcome to this session of Geodiversity and Geoconservation Talks, which is the webinar series hosted by the UNESCO Chair on Geodiversity and Geoconservation. This chair is based at the University of Minho in Portugal, and it's supported by a network of 10 universities in different continents, and also by 2 international organizations. My name is Maria da Glória Garcia. I'm from the University of São Paulo, which is one of the partners of this chair. It's a pleasure to welcome you today. And just a reminder that before we begin, we ask you to keep your microphones muted during the presentation. The session will be recorded and later it will be uploaded to the chair's YouTube channel, but we will stop the recording as soon as the discussion begins. So if you have a question or comment during the discussion period, please type into the chat window or raise your hand. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Silvia Bodzáš Palgutová, which is an expert on geotourism and geoheritage interpretation. She serves as the tourism manager for the Slovak Karst National Park, where she works with destination management, tourism infrastructure, and the interpretation of natural heritage. Silvia is also co-author of a paper published in Geoheritage, Geoheritage Interpretation Panels in UNESCO Global Geoparks, Recommendations and Assessments. Thank you, Silvia, for being here. We're very happy to have you. And now we look forward to our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It is actually a huge pleasure and honor to be here. There are so many names that I already heard of. There are so many names that I've been studying, the articles, and suddenly I'm here hosting a presentation. It is a pleasure. So I would like to say I'm also thankful. And if we can start, I probably will start the presentation.
Yes.
I just want to say that I don't really see you during a presentation, and also I'm slightly bit sick, so if my voice is not quite okay, I'm very sorry for that. So today I would like to speak about effective geoheritage interpretation as an essential tool for sustainable tourism. When we are speaking about sustainable tourism, we don't speak only about ecotourism, as so many people still think, and we speak also about geotourism. And I would like to somehow connect this effectiveness of interpretations of heritage in general and natural heritage in general as a crucial part in education. As the introduction was already given, I would just say that I'm currently working in a national park. This is why I feel like geological heritage is also present in most of the national park, yet it is not as recognized or not so interpreted. So I feel even more and bigger urge to somehow highlight the importance of interpreting geological heritage. And now I would like to somehow kind of distinguish the terms, because most of the people think that the interpretation is information panel, for example, which is not quite true. And I would like to give some 3 different terms. One is interpretation, the second one is interpretation tool or interpretation medium, and the third one is interpretation setting, as I really feel like those 3 are not quite the same, yet are very often mischanged or exchanged. When it comes to geoheritage interpretation, or geointerpretation, we speak about communication. It is more of a way of speaking or communicating the geological heritage to the tourist. So it's not really an actual tool as so many people think. So it's a communication between a tourism entity and a visitor about geological heritage through interpretive tools that serve as mediators of communication within a specific setting. So I think this is also really, really important to know that they are all three interconnected. There cannot be interpretation or geoheritage interpretation without a proper tool, and there cannot be a proper tool without a proper setting. So they are truly connected. When it comes to interpretation settings or environments, I just gave some examples so we can understand a little bit better what we are talking about. Those settings are museums, visitor centers, geoschools, geotrails, online environment as well, or educational trails in general. If we are speaking about interpretation tools, this is what most people knows. This is something that we are usually using for educating our visitors. And those interpretation tools, I decided to put into categories as it's quite easier to work with them and to later on manage. And first, it's in-person interpretation tool, and there are such a tool such as guided tours, events, workshops, seminars, classes, quest games, treasure hunting, experiential activities. So many interesting in-person activities that can be done as an interpretation of geological heritage. Then there are static interpretation tools, which I feel are some quite like this kind of standards, such as interpretation panels, interactive exhibits, traditional exhibits. Also nowadays, plenty of digital exhibits or even geoproducts, even though those are more of a presentations of geological heritage if they are done right, rather than interpreting, but still to some extent they are also interpreting the geological heritage to the tourists. There are also many interactive maps, printed folding maps, topographic maps and models. We also have portable tools such as printed educational materials, digital educational materials, mobile apps, portable e-guides, or online tools such as websites, social networks, online audiovisual platforms, and things like this. On this slide, we can see several interpretation tools. So it is kind of like mediums that are available, or they are making it available to make the interpretation happen. And besides this one, we cannot forget about a personal guide as a person, and usually those are the most beloved ones, and tourists usually like the guided tours from all the interpretation tools the most. And then there are so many interactive tools that most of the visitors now they like more than the traditional ones. Now I would like to speak a little bit about the article that was already mentioned that I had with my supervisor when I was at the Technical University as a doctoral student with Lubomir Štrba. And it was truly a journey. It was truly a journey. It was really hard to make categories of all of those recommendations. There's plenty of recommendations that I've found throughout my literary analysis, and so many of them were constantly repeating. So those categories really helped to make some kind of assessment or more simplified recommendations that are easier to kind of navigate through. When it comes to UNESCO geoparks that took the part in this research, there were 11 in total. And the first was Lauhanvuori in Finland, then second Estrela in Portugal, Grevena Kozani in Greece, Origens in Spain, Bakony Balaton in Hungary, Reykjanes in Iceland, Sandhordland in Norway, de Honsruk in Netherlands, Shetland in UK, Kulasalihli in Turkey, and Cosis du Quercy in France. And I'm very thankful. I feel like I cannot express how thankful I am that they took a part in this research, because I know how much work it takes in geoparks. It's truly time consuming, and to take a part and take your time and invest it in a research and a foreign researcher, it was truly something that I was really, really thankful for. And without them, it wouldn't be possible. And on this slide, we can already see two interpretation panels. I didn't include more, and I also didn't include all the questions, as the article is available in its open access, and I didn't like to repeat for those who already read the article. But on this slide, for example, we could see the example on the left from Portugal, from Estrela, and on the right side from Iceland, from Reykjanes Geopark. I would also try to make it a little bit different from the article itself, but there were 6 main categories. The first category was more concerned about simplicity and clarity without losing scientific accuracy, or basically making it understandable for the public. The second was creative education, or making the interpretation creative enough and memorable enough that the education will actually happen, yet still providing the education. So it's not just about enjoyment or fun, but also about enhancing knowledge in tourists. The third category was provocation, or trying to arouse immediate interest by provoking the tourists with certain sentences, with certain colors, images, and things like this. Fourth category, like everyday relationships, or basically ABC concepts, so that the interpretation should not be only about geological heritage or geological interpretation, but connected to cultural and biotic aspects of the region. And then also enjoyment, or question and physical activities, and arousing interest to do them, or to take a part in certain activity, or to start to think about a certain thing. So there was a fifth category, and the sixth and last category was about sustainability. And mostly about promoting sustainability, promoting conservation, and promoting some kind of ways that tourists can take a part in such a conservation itself, in himself, or that kind of way that he can be truly a helpful part of this whole sustainability system. On this slide, we can see the whole table of contents from the article, and I just want to really quickly explain what was done. There was these 6 categories, as I said, and each category had some questions that were also parts of my literary analysis. So all of those questions rose up from some already made recommendations through articles that I read. So there were several, and each geopark and each interpretation panel that they provided was assessed by these questions, by yes, partly, or no. And in the practice, it was really difficult, as first of all, it's always a little bit subjective. That's something that I have to say. And there are other limitations, such as when you are assessing only one interpretation panel, there are no many you cannot have the full image, or you cannot fully know about other aspects of other interpretation panels on the same nature trail, which of course I didn't have all the panels. So I just want to say there are still some limitations, and I still feel like it can be improved in the future. From what I somehow collected, and from all the recommendations, and from what I've seen from this research, there is like three main things I would like to somehow highlight, and that's like coming from simplicity to provocation. When we speak about simplicity, I mean aiming for a 13-year-old comprehension level, as it is more beneficial to somehow focus on a younger audience, as most of the time the adult audience has the geological knowledge from the school years, and basically from they kind of stop their geological progress or geological information or knowledge on the same level as they were in school, and they are not studying it further. For those who are studying it further, or for those who have more knowledge and would like to know more, it should be given through a layered information, which I will speak about in a minute. Then also maximum of 200 words per panel. It's something that kind of assures simplicity, but it can be a little bit more if the panel is well structured and hierarchically divided, so it's not too overwhelming for the tourist to look at, like there is not too much text at once. And then also translating technical vocabulary or technical language into everyday language, so no scientific jargon, and trying to find more human language to be understandable. The second is creativity, as using explanatory visuals should be something that we are doing. So not just decorative photos, but something that is actually explaining the processes, and something that is kind of educating and enhancing knowledge in tourists about the certain geological formation, not just looking at it or just describing it, that this is it. And the same as connecting the geoheritage interpretations to other aspects of the area or one's life is also creative approach, as geoheritage should not be just kind of like separated from the whole ecosystem. It's part of the ecosystem, and it's connected highly to people and to biotic nature. And lastly, provocation. It sounds really weird, the word provocation itself, but it's not being too provocative, more like truly seeking the attention of tourists, and delivering a single strong take-home message, and using provocative open questions, as well as kind of like motivating and inciting to activities, and finding and like trying to incite in tourists to find more, to look for the answers. When it comes to ABC concept, I think most of us who are here probably know this concept really, really well. I won't explain it too much, but I really feel it's really, really important when it comes to interpretation. The discussion should be whether it's important for one panel only, or for the whole nature trail. So for example, whether it should be important for interpretation tool, or it should be important for the setting. So for example, on the one nature trail, you can have one interpretation panel that is more cultural, and the other one more biotic, and the third one more abiotic, or whether it should be combined all the time in the one panel. And I think this is something that we still are not quite solved. It's truly open for discussion, but it's definitely for sure when it comes to geotourism and speaking about geotourism, it should be ABC concept for maximizing the tourist perceptions of geological heritage, and kind of like maximizing the possibility they will remember what they learned. I'm sorry. Sorry. When it comes to this slide, I would like to just, in this and the next slide, I would like to just say execution tactics, or some kind of tips and tricks that works based on the research that I had done by these 11 UNESCO geoparks and assessment of their panels, but also by my research later on during my dissertation. So when it comes to execution tactics, I would say tactile joy. So basically touching, being able to touch, being able to move, and some kind of interact with the interpretation is always beneficial, is always something that people are seeking and want to. And it's honestly one of the most popular when it comes to interpretation tools. People usually wants to or prefers to engage with those that they can touch. However, from the research, it was obvious that only 9% of panels contained interactive questions and prompts for physical activity, and none of them were actually interactive. I feel like interactive panels in general, they are not necessary, but they should somehow combine the interactivity in the other ways. Another thing that I would like to mention when it comes to some tactics or execution tactics, and that's layering information. As I already said, there are some recommendations that it should, the interpretation should be understandable by 13 years old people or kids, or in general by young people. However, it can be a little bit tricky because there are still people that just demand more information, that for them it can be too simple. It won't learn them anything, and it can be really problematic in the future. However, by layering information, we can somehow eliminate this frustration from their side, as layering information, whether it is through like when we have information kiosk and there are touch screens and there are several categories they can click on, and a new layer of information will pop up constantly. That's one way, but there are other ways as well. When we see information panel itself, there can be layered information. For example, just by the size of certain text or color or boldness, we can put this information or this text above the smaller ones, so we create some kind of layers. Those information that are more important for us to say or tell the tourists, or those that we feel are the mandatory, the most important ones they should know, that we can put on the higher level, or we can provide them more distinguishedly, so they can definitely tell and see this at first. And this other information that we would like to say to those tourists that demand more information, we'll put with in a smaller font that are not that noticeable. Those are also kind of layers. But also we have QR codes nowadays, and yes, there are some limitations such as mobile signals in nature environments, and in a Slovak Karst, it's truly something that is problematic, to be honest. But QR codes are amazing for layering information and providing information, additional information to tourists. There are, however, issues in the creation of geological heritage interpretation, and such as, for example, insufficient attention at the academic and research level. There are not many researches like case studies or studies in general on how, like, on the level of comprehension of interpretations in general. As well, there is a misconception that providing information equals education, which is not true. Just providing information without doing it properly does not ensure that the education actually happens. And there is also insufficient cooperation among experts from various fields. In my opinion, geologists themselves cannot really make interpretation panel be successful. They constantly need to communicate with experts from various fields to make it effective and to make it attractive and engaging, and to really ensure that what they are expecting from the interpretation to what is the goal, that it will actually be executed. And I would also like to mention lack of awareness of their shortcomings among DMOs, national parks, and geoparks. There is not many people that actually deal with this issue. There is not many people that actually realize that there is something like this, that just providing interpretation panels does not mean that people are reading it or even getting some knowledge from. And there is also some kind of like a public stigma of geology as being too difficult to understand, which was also proven by my research during dissertation, that it's actually true. Most of the people really find geology to be too difficult, and they even avoid any education, any engagement with anything that seems like geology, which was ridiculous, but it's honestly something that is true and a fact, and it's something that we should think about when we are creating those interpretations, so they are not too scary to the general public. And lastly, I would like to mention absence of methodological and standardized procedures for development and management, that I will somehow kind of include in this slide, because there is truly a need for some standardization. However, the standardization and some kind of like a creation and management of interpretation, it's something that cannot be done just like this. The theoretical analyses are amazing, but we are still working from literature and from recommendations that are pretty old, and from researches that have been done in 1957 or even more than that. So it's truly the need for standardization based on the need on research as well, and need for methodology, some recommendations based on all those new researches and methodologies, as well as creating projects and case studies on this topic, and definition and defining the terms such as interpretation tools, so people really know what they are doing, and they know how to work with those terms. And lastly, also process management. Management is something that is also really important, whether it's a planning of interpretation, the actual implementation of it, or when we are speaking about constantly assessing it and trying to somehow improve the current interpretation, or we are seeking the feedback from the interpretation, is really important as well. In this slide, or in a few next slides, I would just really quickly try to speak about my research that I've been doing later during my dissertation. I really hope I will publish it soon, so I don't want to bring you all the information that I don't have fully processed, but I still want to show you that there are researches that can be done on this topic. And for example, I was doing a study of pupils and students aged from 12 to 20 focusing on their understanding of 2 interpretation panels from Slovak geoparks, as well as their opinions and preferences regarding geoheritage interpretation and geoheritage in general. There were in total 1,000, I think, and 50 respondents. So I think those results were really interesting. The panels that were a part of the research and that the research took place on, this is the first one, and this is the second one. I was trying to kind of see the level of understanding of these panels from the respondents' perspective, and there were like 4 levels. It was really interesting to see that it's truly problematic. For example, on this panel, it was definitely amount of text that was problematic, and also kind of a lack of kind of like a complex vision. So like a theme of the panel that wasn't fully, that people weren't fully sure from looking at it. And on this, it was complete opposite. People didn't have enough information to fully comprehend and understand what they actually see on the panel. So from the whole research that I done, there were several like general conclusions arising from the research results. And there was not just, those conclusions weren't just from the research on the pupils or the research on the UNESCO geoparks, but also all combined together with all the theoretical analysis. I'm sorry. When it comes to those conclusions, there are 22 of them, and I really feel like many of them are similar to those given recommendations from many articles before, and from my theoretical analysis as well. The first, I would definitely say that visual value determines the success of other values. That was something that I feel like many times we don't really realize when we are doing the interpretation panels. The second was geology is generally perceived as difficult to understand, which we already kind of expected. Third, previous experience with studying the abiotic environment is rare among children and young people. Fourth, pupils and students assess their knowledge of geology negatively to neutrally, which again was quite expected when we saw their general perception. Then geological heritage is correctly perceived as natural, but the term geological is not understood. This is also important to know that many people, when they saw geological heritage, they were thinking about any natural heritage. Geological almost seemed to them as geographical in some kind of way, and it was very often all over the place when it comes to the term itself. The 6 panels that best met professional recommendations were also the most visually attractive, which was surprising, but nicely surprising. 7th, colorfulness, modern design, and aesthetically appealing illustrations are key stimuli of interest. So again, we are speaking about some visual value here. 8, young people pay attention to interpretation only partially. To expect that they will read the whole panel is very brave, and we have to somehow think that and kind of consider that it may not happen. Many significant shortcomings are visuals, and they are mutually influential. And 10 modern and innovative interpretive tools are attractive, which is again something that we already expected. When we speak about 11th conclusion, it is that it is difficult to overcome the perception of geological heritage as uninteresting. First of all, it's because geology is apparently very difficult to them. But second of all, it's also because they don't really consider geological heritage as, for example, mountains and waterfalls, and all of those beautiful places they usually visit and find interesting a lot or attractive a lot. Yet they do not fully recognize that, oh, this is geological heritage as well. Then 12, focusing interpretation on younger visitors increases geotourism effectiveness as we somehow encourage the young people to take interest in geology. It kind of encourages also their parents or other adults to take some little time to pay attention to those interpretations as well. And also we are kind of building the generation of later on young people, and later on another parents that will have kids that will like geology, and therefore we are kind of popularizing it for the future generations. The 13th reason or conclusion, hands-on and interactive exhibitions are most successful. When we are speaking about hands-on, usually we should imagine exhibits that we can touch, basically, simply as it is, and people prefer that. They don't need anything else. They just want to touch it, they want to try, they want to interact. Another conclusion, storytelling is an effective interpretive tool. Again, this is something we already expected, but young people and kids already admitted this. The 15th, cognitive activity-based interpretive tools are strongly preferred by young people. So when we are speaking about cognitive activity-based interpretive tools, we are speaking about tools that are touching our senses, where those are the tools where more senses are used, first of all, and second of all, that we are somehow connecting new information with already existing information that we know, or that the tourists know. So the tourists have a little less struggle to understand and to remember things when they can connect it with something they already know or something that's more familiar to them. So that's about it. The 16, text-based interpretation should be appropriately structured and limited in quantity. The 17th, the main theme of interpretation must be clearly identifiable at first contact, which is something that the assessed interpretation panel that I showed you before lacked. Then average time spent on an information panel is 3 minutes, which again was very similar to the recommendations. And also this is how it was rated by the pupils and students. QR codes are used only under specific conditions. So if the QR code is not well promoted or is not well said what is in this QR code, they will not scan it. Then layered information delivery is more engaging for visitors. Then interpretation should contain only information that is adequately explained. And interpretation in Slovak geoparks has significant shortcomings. When it comes to the 21st conclusion, I just want to add that this was the problem for the panel of UNESCO Geopark Novohrad Novgrad. And truly, all those pictures and those schemes that they provided weren't really explained, and almost no one really understood it. So, and just really shortly, as I'm working in a national park, and geotourism is also a part of national parks, even though most of the national parks are not paying that much attention to it. I just want to somehow put it from my perspective as someone that is working in a national park, that most visited sites in our national parks are actually geosites. That sustainable tourism is currently being developed in Slovak national parks. So together with ecotourism, geotourism should be included. Interpreting whole ecosystems cannot be done without geoheritage interpretation. So when we were doing when we were creating interpretation panels for a new nature trail, it couldn't be done without it. It is a part of an ecosystem. And environmental education and conservation are one of the priorities, as well as for geotourism. So that's another connection. Also for ABC concept, the cooperation with external experts is definitely needed. And this is where the process of creating interpretations is a little bit slowed down, as well as visualizing geological processes for public is quite difficult, and our expectations aren't often met. So it was very difficult just recently when we tried to visualize geological processes of creating the Zadielska Gorge, which is the most visited, one of the most visited sites. And it was really difficult to find a designer, to find an illustrator, and to be able to explain it to those processes to them so they design it accurately. I would like to thank you for your attention, and please, I think, I think feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you very much, Silvia.